Hey folks, today you'll be listening to a special bonus episode of Head in the Office where we sat down with Kyle Blomquist, a candidate for Congress in Michigan's 1st Congressional District, a district that's pretty far north and is pretty red. So we had a number of questions for him about running as a sort of left populist progressive in the Democratic primary in a district that has been, at least for the last decade and a half, controlled by Republicans. We also had some questions for him about his support for Medicare for All and how that goes, pushing it in a rural district, what he wants to do with housing and all of the critiques he has of our housing policies, given that he's an architect and he has some insight into that. And also where he thinks the Democrats broadly should go from here, as well as his personal critiques of the Democratic Party and how it's failed rural districts like his. So make sure you stay tuned for this. It's a very interesting interview. I think you guys are going to like it. Even though it is an interview episode, I do implore you to stay for this one because it's pretty good. If you want more content like this, if you're tuning in on YouTube or on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, consider becoming a patron. You get early access to all of our content. You get access to this kind of stuff before anybody else. And I think that's pretty cool. You also get commercial-free episodes and a number of other benefits that you can check out over on patreon.com/headintheofficepod. But without further ado, here is our interview with Kyle Blomquist. We are now joined by Kyle Blomquist, candidate for Congress in Michigan's 1st Congressional District. That's way up north for our non-Michiganders. Kyle, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, the first question I have to ask, and I say this as a lifelong Michigander, of course, this is not meant to be derisive, but the further up north you go is like you're going further down south in America in terms of like Confederate flags, conservatism up in the northern part of Michigan. And you've got a pretty progressive platform. Medicare for all, universal childcare and parental leave, abolishing ICE, and so on. So if I were to embody the mentality of a Democratic consultant, how the hell are you going to make that work?
Sure. No, I appreciate that. And that's usually a lot of people's reaction, right? Is how are you going to run on that platform there? And the reality is that me personally, I couldn't run on any other platform.
Yeah.
These are the things that I believe. And I'm hopeful that people understand that there's a deep sincerity to all the things that I'm saying, and that ultimately that's the foundation here, right? Mm-hmm. Is that too often I think that especially Democratic politicians, they try in rural districts to like triangulate where their constituencies are at. When ultimately what I'm trying to do is completely different than that. I'm not trying to win an election based on what I guess the Overton window is,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to use my platform that I get just by filing to run.
Yeah.
Trying to use that to tell my neighbors in northern Michigan that their lives can be better and that I mean to make them better. Right.
Yeah.
And too often I think that in rural America, Democrats will moderate to obscurity. Mm-hmm. They will choose a position that is somewhere between them and the GOP and to the point where they kind of meld together. And then they're completely trying to win that race based on negative partisanship. They're trying to say my opponent is this, that, and the other thing because they are a Republican.
Yeah.
And I say this, as I don't care whether you voted Republican in the last election. What I care about is whether or not you have quality health care or whether you have affordable housing or whether you have living wages. And when I speak to people who would conventionally be seen as conservatives, most of them are conservatives just because they have beliefs. They have a belief system. I don't want to pretend that they don't, right? But I think that so much of it is this expectation for less. Right. And so it becomes all about individual responsibility. It becomes this bootstraps mentality, which helps us up in the Upper Peninsula in northern Michigan because it's deeply rural, because we feel like we're isolated from the levers of power in Lansing or in DC. But I think that's also self-defeating. And so I hope that my neighbors recognize me not as a Democrat, because I've never really identified myself as a Democrat, even though I'm running for the Democratic nomination. But instead, they recognize me as the same guy that works, that shops at the same stores as them, goes to the same churches as them, goes to the same bars as them, and that we have a hell of a lot more in common than we have apart.
Yeah, you're running as like a Democrat who believes in things in a rural district.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but like that CD1 in Michigan went like plus 15, plus 20.
Yeah.
for Jack Bergman
Thereabouts,
last election.
yeah.
It's kind of amazing for me to hear somebody who is running as a Democrat in a rural district who doesn't want to, like you said, go around and sort of look at the constituency and triangulate a position that they think can work. Go and focus test everybody and figure out what they need to believe.
Right.
You just have things that you believe in, and you want to go and cater your platform to that.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes it easier. Like there's a lot of times where it kind of like, and again, haven't won shit, so it's
Of course.
we all sound like geniuses at this point, right?
Yeah.
But honestly, it really is that it feels like a cheat code sometimes. Because I walk into a room and people are like, "Oh, you always have an answer for something." And it's because I have a belief system that's underlying that I can draw from, and I'm not trying to recall the latest polling data or what the position of the party should be.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to
Revolutionary stuff, man.
yeah, exactly.
Which
Really
I mean
tapping
that
into
genuine.
it.
Like I don't mean that in a way where like I'm talking down, but like we have so many Democrats in Michigan and everywhere across the country where they try to like perfectly, almost scientifically piece together the perfect sentence that they're then going to go sell to voters, and they don't. It seems to me like they don't stop to think like, well, what do I actually believe in? And how can I persuade people to join me in that position? And I am grateful to see that you running in this red district are taking a different approach.
Well, and I think that I'm going to make mistakes in the way that I speak.
Regular people do.
Exactly. Regular people do. And
Yeah.
I'm a regular guy. I didn't leave on this journey because I wanted to be in Congress, right?
Of course.
I'm left on this journey because I didn't see my values reflected on either side of the ballot. And I appreciate what that feels like, cycle after cycle, having to settle on your candidates. And then when you're wondering why people are apathetic, why people are disengaged from the political process, or they feel that there are no stakes, is because they really aren't. If you are not seeing your lives improved on either side of the ballot, you're either going to check out or you're going to vote how you always voted.
Well, especially in a rural red Republican plus 20, Republican plus 15 district like Michigan CD1, it's like, yeah, people really don't see both sides of the aisle. People really don't see their ideology, their whatever represented when they go to the ballot box because the Democrats are trying to be Republican.
Yeah. Well, and it's paradoxical because they're simultaneously sounding it more and more like Republicans every cycle, and yet they're just trying to attack them on the basis of being Republicans.
Yeah.
Right. And I one thing I say over and over again is that if you're a politician, like I'm a politician now, like whether I like it or not, I'm a politician, is that your job should really be to set your North Star at justice, at improving your constituents' lives, and then make that popular. Like that should be your job. It should not be
Persuasion.
trying to guess at the best way to package the same bullshit that we've been accepting over and over.
Now, I want to ask you about your primary and then Jack Bergman if you get through this primary in a minute, but I do want you to just go ahead and lay out, like, what are your top issues for this race? Your website is pretty comprehensive, which is good to see because I won't name any names. I don't want to set you up, give you opponents here on this podcast.
Yeah, right.
But there are Democrats across the country, high-profile ones, that don't even have policy pages, and they're running, and it blows my mind. But just go ahead and give our listeners, what are your top issues that you're focusing on?
What are
for
the things
CD1?
you believe in?
Oh, right. So I would encourage anybody to go to our website. We really tried to be as exhaustive as possible.
Yeah.
It's a good
To the
website.
point where it was exhausting. And what I did at first is I really burnt myself out just writing like the whole policy, like not only the policy, but the underlying, like how do you actually address these things?
Well, and I know you give a shit when I see stuff like the Faircloth Amendment. Nobody knows what that
it's
is.
a little granular.
No,
right?
but like when you put something like that in there, I know you're taking it seriously, which is what gives me hope.
Well, I'm scrolling through your issues page and I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. I'm like, oh, wow. Like this isn't just like a top 3 things that you think people are going to respond to. These are things that when you read it, you can tell that you like it. So if you'd like to go on and tell our listeners what the things you believe in are.
Oh,
go
shit.
for
I
it.
mean, like, I think that there's like 14, 15, 18,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
there is, because every now and then I'll find something. And really the way that we eventually decided that we needed to do it is we needed to make it as digestible as possible on the website, right? But in terms of the top 3 issues that I think are facing all Americans, and especially in rural red districts like ours, right, in northern Michigan, is healthcare access. I believe in Medicare for all. I believe that we should join the rest of the world in providing healthcare universally, comprehensively to all of our citizens. And I think that need is more acute in places like the Upper Peninsula. Because in the Upper Peninsula, you're surrounded by 2 things, Great Lakes and network lines that are defined by the Wisconsin-Michigan border, right? And so if you need care, like at one point we needed care for our newborn son. He had an orthopedic condition, so you had to go to a pediatric specialist that was going to cast him every 2 weeks. Our options were that we were going to drive 9 hours down to Detroit every 2 weeks.
Just not an option for
which
most
is
people.
not an option for working people, right? Or you were going to go 2 hours down to Green Bay, Wisconsin, and you're going to cross that network line.
Yeah.
And your family maximum out of pocket on your beautiful Blue Cross Blue Shield bronze plan goes from $16,000 to $32,000.
Which is untenable.
Which is not, how can I pretend that I have health care?
And like nobody chooses their health insurance plan. It's given to them by their employer. Like you don't get options.
Well, and it is for so many people.
Yeah.
For my wife and I, we're small business owners, and it really is just it's pretty small. It's the two of us and one other employee. And so when you leave school and you have student loan debt to the extent that
You're telling me, man.
it's like it's basically you're garnishing your wages, right?
Yeah.
For forever, right? Like we look at it and we go, shit, we've paid a lot of money, and there's no bottom to this thing. But you are an individual, and you say, I'm going to have to use the health insurance marketplace, right? And so you get a Blue Cross Blue Shield bronze plan, just like anybody else that's on the open market. And it's $1,900 a month for your household.
Oh my God.
And you can't pay
Christ, man.
you can't pay $1,900 a month for right?
Wow.
But the government says it's okay because we have these ACA subsidies. We have these advanced tax credits.
Yeah.
So bet you're going to pay $700 a month. The federal government through advanced tax credits will cover $1,200 a month. And now you have healthcare, right?
Yeah.
No, because you have this massive out-of-pocket maximum or these deductibles that you have to meet before you actually get care. And all the way along that, they're denying your claims and saying, no, that shouldn't be covered in this. And
They've got an army of lawyers to tell you no.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, I pay $700 a month. The federal government's paying a private health insurance company $1,200 a month. I'm still not getting care because I haven't hit my $16,000 family maximum out of pocket.
And you got to drive hours to get it.
And I got to drive hours to get it. So no one has health care. Like if we're really talking, and it's such a grift that it's incredible to me that we can continue to perpetuate it.
And when you have those massive out-of-pocket maximums, you don't want to go to the doctor. You don't want to go to the doctor. You don't want to have to meet that deductible. And now ACA tax, like extended subsidies, gone.
No, it's crushing people.
Yeah.
And care avoidance is what is leading to chronic illness as much as anything, right?
Yeah.
And so Medicare for all, huge part of my platform. That's the way to do it. Not public option, not any of this other shit, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're doing is you are preserving the system as it exists in some way. And you are going to create some second tier system that the federal government can kind of calibrate how it sees fit.
And they can just
depending on
ignore.
what administration, like, do we want to fight that battle all the time? No.
No.
Yeah.
So Medicare for all is a huge one. That's the top one.
And I'll just say, for the sake of people that maybe don't think too much about this stuff, the way that American health insurance works is actually psychotic. They make money by giving you the worst service possible.
Yes.
Again, like they assemble an army of lawyers to try to deny all of your claims after charging you deductibles and copays and all this other stuff.
Right.
It is evil. It's an evil industry.
The board at United Healthcare, didn't they sue the company because they were providing too much care after Brian Thompson? Like, come on.
Right. Well, and you can almost draw a line between that kind of mentality, that kind of like predatory behavior.
Yeah.
That like you owe us this much profit, even though you're not getting anything that's advancing humanity. You can draw a line between that and like prisons, private prisons, suing the state governments because they haven't provided them enough inmates.
You haven't arrested enough people for me.
Like those two things are part and parcel to the same kind of crooked system.
So yeah, totally with you. Medicare for all, absolutely necessary. I didn't mean to cut you off. Some people don't understand how just on a fundamental level, the health insurance industry is just evil. Like they like. I'm a critic of capitalism broadly. However, the way health insurance works is beyond the pale.
Oh no, it's so remarkable because the entirety of my life growing up, I just remember whenever there would be conversations about Medicare for all or universal health care, it was always treated as this like, oh, man, that's fucking crazy, man. Like, who could do that?
How are you going to pay for
Everyone else in the world, apparently, right?
And it's always, how can we afford it, brother? How can we afford not to?
Exactly. And we're paying twice per capita what the rest of the world pays for
Yes.
healthcare, and we don't actually get healthcare on the back end of it. But we're paying a lot to private insurance companies.
And you got to drive 9 hours to get it.
You got to drive
And it's
9
like
hours.
worse
Yeah.
outcomes for more money. It's
So
insane.
exactly.
Healthcare top issue, please continue.
Yeah, and the second top issue is housing. It's affecting everybody in the country, but it's even I think it would be a surprise surprise to most people to learn that even in small towns in northern Michigan, that you have problem affording housing too.
Yeah.
And that's a multifaceted issue. And it comes down to the cost of construction. I'm an architect. I see it every single day. And what is so depressing to me as something that I confront on a daily basis is getting phone calls from people who have saved up their entire lives so that they can build their dream home. They can't afford it anymore.
Yeah.
They basically, it is not a reality for them or anybody that comes after them because of the cost of inflation, right? And that's driven by 1,000,001 other things, right? But one thing that we can do is we can actually provide housing with deep affordability. That's what we need to do.
Yep.
Because so much of our system, whether it be state grants or what the way that we invest in HUD, is you are aiming for almost the middle of the market. And a big part of that is, I had mentioned the Faircloth Amendment.
Yeah,
right? So
please explain what it is for people that don't know.
I'll explain it. I'll try to make it as brief as possible.
It's another insane thing that you do, but please.
Right. So in 1999, Bill Clinton signed this big sweeping housing reform, and within it, they crammed the Faircloth Amendment. And what the Faircloth Amendment did was it functionally prevented the federal government from investing in new public housing units.
Crazy.
Why?
Right?
Why?
It locked the number of public housing at like 1992 levels or whatever.
1999 levels. So
There you
when
go,
they passed
Insane.
that, so they locked it in there.
The population's grown.
Yes. So the main way that we housed people on the low end of the market, the people who are our workforce or servers, all those, like that's how we used to do it, is public housing. And then what we did is we did what we always do, is capitalists came in and they wanted to starve the beast. They wanted to attribute it to any number of other things. They wanted to use Cabrini Green as an example of not societal failures in terms of the way that we police or the war on drugs or any of these other things, that they wanted to make it a referendum on public housing. Which is right. Like,
yeah.
A little
Why?
bit of a stretch.
Well, if there's
right?
public housing, how can your private mom and pop's landlord with 12 rentals
Exactly.
exploit the working class?
I know.
Well, if
Exactly.
there's
Out
public
there in
housing,
these streets.
my property values. Like, come on now, guys. I gotta make this thing 10x.
Right. So with bipartisan support, they passed this sweeping housing bill, and it includes this Faircloth Amendment. And what it's done instead is we use something called low-income housing tax credits. And what low-income housing tax credits do is they are a tax incentive to provide limited affordability within developments.
Yeah.
And so you might have a development that has 100 units, but they're going to apply for low-income housing tax credits on maybe 50 of the units, right? So half of the units are going to have these affordability criteria. But what that isn't is it isn't deep affordability. It's limited affordability, where public housing used to lock your rent would never be more than 30% of your income.
Yeah.
So if you are a
that'd be
senior
glorious.
on a limited income or on a fixed income, you could always afford housing, right? But now what this does is it'll say, all right, so if we have 100 units in this development, 50 of them will be limited affordability. What that limited affordability looks like is it might be 40% of the area median income. So that's not your income.
Yeah.
Right? It's someone else's income.
That's
doesn't
everyone
do
else's
you.
income that's making more than you.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the way these tax credits work also is that they're not transferable like carbon credits. And carbon credits, we could go on.
Yeah, that's
all
our
day
good
about
thing.
Don't get me started, brother.
Exactly. But they're non-transferable, so they stay with the property. So if you're a developer and you don't have millions of dollars of tax offsets to be able to utilize these tax credits, what do you have to do?
Yeah.
You transfer 99% ownership, the share of ownership, over to private equity companies. So there,
Joy.
Joy,
so-
we love that.
So and that isn't permanent. Like there's public housing units that were built in the 40s and 50s that are still public housing units and are still deeply affordable under the same criteria.
Yeah.
Low-income housing tax credits, in most cases and often cases, have a 30-year window. Like they need to be affordable under that criteria that you applied under for 30 years. And in some cases, you can actually buy your way out of it after 15 years.
Oh.
So the main way that we, over the last 25 years, that we've created affordable housing, if you want to call it that, we've done is we've moved all those properties into the hands of private equity.
Yep.
And so there's a cliff that a lot of people aren't talking about, which is the possibility, and I would argue likelihood, that a private equity company says, F this, we're going to end up converting these to luxury units or to market rate units, and we're going to pay whatever penalty or do whatever.
Yeah.
And so long as we're able to do that, we can.
There is a poverty of compelling, quality political commentary.
Absolutely.
And we desperately need more people across mediums to be making the difference. And that is exactly why we have launched our Substack, our newsletter, Tertiary News, 100% independent media, giving you quality summaries and commentary and opinion pieces on the most important news happening around the country and around the world.
The #1 geopolitical podcast has gone away from the spoken word and into the written word.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wonderful. You got to see it, folks. You got to check it out.
This is quite literally an incredible development. And if you want to be a part of it, you can subscribe absolutely for free. Headintheoffice.substack.com, and you can support your favorite bit of independent media in this hellish ecosystem.
We are vertically integrating into other realms of content to make you more informed.
Please check it out. Back to the episode.
I'm glad that you. I'm glad that you're bringing up housing as a candidate running so far up in the north, because there's this narrative, especially from people like J.D. Vance, that immigrants are the reason housing is so expensive right now. And I would wager there aren't that many immigrants from the southern border in the northern, third or half of Michigan.
Oh, well, and it's amazing. And what I hate is when and this is partisanship. Partisanship gets us all. Right. Mm-hmm. And that means Democrats aren't immune to it either. And so I hate to, bag on Republican voters too much. But I was in Bimbo's bar on the north side of Iron Mountain the other day, and I was having a conversation with a guy, and he had attributed housing costs to immigrants as well. I said, brother, we can't afford housing here in Iron Mountain. And like, have you seen, and it's,
we all look the same here.
Exactly. Like brother.
Well, and it's like, it's plain as day. It's stuff like the Faircloth Amendment, this seemingly sort of innocuous thing that happened decades ago that nobody pays attention to now. No. It's not some nefarious plot to like import voters. It's just like, Bill Clinton signed a bill in 1999, and now over time, for various reasons, housing has gotten more expensive.
Right, and when you can see what housing affordability and availability looks like in those terms, is if we stopped building public housing 25 years ago, and our population has been steadily growing.
Yeah.
And actually, those public housing units are coming offline, right? Is that they're going into disrepair.
They're too old.
And while they're frozen at 1999 levels, that's not just a big basket that's like nationwide that we can draw from, and we can go, all right, we have some surplus here that we can deploy. That was broken up by every single public housing authority, like thousands of local public housing authorities, and those are where those allotments are.
Yep.
So if your local public housing authority went defunct and you don't have public housing units anymore, those are now basically encapsulated in that community forever. They'll never be moved from, Ontonagon, Michigan to New York City or anything else like that.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I gotta say, I gotta appreciate like the deep like knowledge you have of these issues, because like once again, I think it comes down to like you are a guy who believes in things and you are running because you believe in them. It's been a big thing on our show recently. We've been talking a lot about what we call our Democrats. My Democrats love to go around and just say whatever the most poll tested thing is, love to consult with 1 billion consultants, do 1 trillion focus groups to figure out what position they can triangulate to go out there. And you can always
And then they don't even stand on it.
They don't stand on it. They cave
their
instantly.
belief.
And you can always tell that they're being phony. And I mean, we had those elections last year in 2025. Democrats won bigly. And one of the lessons was we need to talk about affordability. And now you have a lot of Democrats who, sure, they were talking about affordability like broadly before, are just saying the word. Yeah. And they're just saying we need things to be more affordable. And they're not going deeper. They're not talking about policy. They're not talking about the not so invisible forces that have shaped our lives forever, like the Faircloth Amendment. They're not talking about these things because they don't really care. Maybe they do. Maybe that's not the most fair thing to say. But when I hear these people speak, when I hear people like, say, Alyssa Slotkin speak, I just don't believe what they're saying. When I hear Hakeem Jeffries saying, oh, Democrats are aligned, we need to do this, I don't believe him because I haven't seen these people stand on anything. And you're coming in here and we're just having a casual conversation and you're able to reach into this deep bag of actual policy knowledge and actual things that you care about. And it's so refreshing.
Well, one is an occupational hazard, right? As an architect, I'm like, I see it. I see it.
Yeah, of course,
the threads.
yeah.
I'm like
And
Charlie, like with
that's
the,
real experience that you have.
Sure.
And that's something you have in your background that you can bring to actually like represent people. And I think it's so important to have that deep policy knowledge bag to actually be able to talk about this and talk about a bipartisan fair cloth amendment, because you're going and talking to voters in a rural red district. Yeah. You're going and talking to people, and you're not saying, look, Republicans, they did all this, they suck so bad, let me adopt their positions without being having an R next to my name. You're able to explain these things to people in a way that isn't partisan. Because so much of what our politics has become is, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I can't possibly like whatever. And I mean, we're obviously aligned more with Democrats than we are Republicans. We don't necessarily identify as Democrats because of a whole host of reasons that we've talked about. But when I'm talking to people in my regular life, I try to stay away from partisan language because it's something that immediately like triggers people. People respond automatically when you do that. And when you believe in things, you're able to stay away from that. You're able to get to the humanity of issues.
well, and you nailed it, because you have conversations, and the conversations always go. They start in a point of agreement.
Yeah.
As default, like that's how we work as human beings. Is that we are in a point of agreement. And the number of conversations that I have where you will agree with somebody for 45 minutes, and then as soon as somebody's like, yeah, those Democrats, or yeah, those Republicans, right? As soon as they attribute it to one party or the other, or they absolve, more than anything, that's what they're doing, right? They're absolving their party of any wrongdoing.
And themselves as like a part of their identity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. One of the first things I say when I'm opening a town hall or opening a meet and greet and giving my stump that every politician's forced to do, right, is I say, I can play for easy partisan claps and tell you this is all the Republicans' fault, but I'd be lying to you.
Yeah.
Is that the systems that exist right now were built by Republicans and Democrats, that they're fostered by the establishments of both major political parties, and they're functioning as intended. That it's not like this is not a whoopsie daisy that we're all living through the world's fucking longest, most terrible whoopsie daisy that is, sustained by, 535 lawmakers. This is intentional, right?
Yeah, that's the thing that gets me is like, we'll find something from the 80s or 90s and it's like the I'm going to kill you bill. And it's bipartisan. And then everyone's like, how did the immigrants cause this problem? And it's like, dog, they both voted for it. It is right there in plain language. It blows my mind, man.
Well, and one of the easiest things to talk about from a housing perspective, and to the point where even Donald Trump touched on it, which is like,
When we're missing Trump, when we're missing from Trump,
when you find yourself missing losing ground to Trump on something, that's a bad thing. And so when Trump, and I have no belief that he's going to follow through with it, but when he talks about forcing private equity to divest from single family residential, everybody can agree with that.
So just a slam dunk position.
Why is that not the platform of the Democratic Party? Why is that? That is a piece of legislation that has been proposed and just doesn't have adequate support. Not because it doesn't, on its face, immediately basically repatriate a bunch of single family dwellings to the American working class, but because it would undermine somebody else's pocketbook. Some shareholder value would go down by 0.5 percentage point, and that would be bad. That would be worse than our people not having a vehicle for creating household wealth.
Of course. I mean, we look at a lot of the problems we face today, a lot of the problems with like today's Democratic Party, and I mean, maybe it's not just today's, it's the Democratic Party forever. It's both political parties forever, is money and politics. And it's the way that wealth has given people unprecedented amount of access. And I want to go back to your like issues page. There's one part on there that says you are 100% corruption free. Could you explain what that means to our audience and what that means to you?
Right. Well, what it means to me is that if I'm going to go through the trouble, of running for Congress and having a great personal sacrifice to do this, and I'm going to be saying my beliefs aloud, and that's going to be the entirety of my platform, then I'm not going to allow some kind of corrupting influence into my campaign by the way that I fund that campaign. And that takes many forms, right? Is I'm not going to take any corporate PAC money, and I'm not going to take any pro-Israel money.
Hell yeah,
take
brother.
any AIPAC money. What that does is it clears my conscience, but it also allows me that if I become a lawmaker, that I'm able to do what I intended to do all along, which is to improve the lives of my neighbors. There isn't a conflict of interest there. And I also believe that we should not be holding individual stocks or cryptocurrencies or anything like that in Congress. You cannot have any kind of financial incentive or encumbrance on you while you're trying to do a very hard job of improving the the lives of American people.
And I'm really glad you brought up clearing your conscience, because so many times when we're talking about money in politics, a lot of Democrats will take the position that Republicans are taking endless PAC money, so I have to too. But I'm a Democrat, I'm good, I'm not going to do anything bad with it, I'm just leveling the playing field. Yeah. But it kind of rots your soul when you're taking millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars from a group like AIPAC when a genocide is going on. Yeah. It rots you. Like there has to be something there. You can't take money from these people without thinking in the back of your head, the money spigot's going to turn off if I go out there and say this. Well, and not to cut you off, but it goes back to what you were saying earlier about like having a North Star that guides your politics and convincing people of that position rather than trying to find theirs and adopting whatever position already exists out there. It's believing in things.
Yes, yeah, it's believing in things, but it's also, I think what we're finding, and maybe this is a consequence of social media. Maybe it is creating greater accessibility to running for Congress, for running for these positions. We need to create a sustainable model, and a sustainable model for getting people's lives improved, whether you want to call that progressivism or socialism or whatever you want to attribute it to, is that we need to create a system where more people can get elected with less money. And that needs to be scalable across the country, especially since the Democratic Party, for the most part, there's probably about 100 congressional districts where they've just thrown up their hands. They're not going to participate in that election. They'll let people like me run under their banner because what the hell is.
You think CD1 is one of those that they just given up on?
I believe so. I believe so. I believe that there's at least a tendency there to believe that they have not paid us as much mind as we would hope. Mm-hmm. But I would also go further, and I would say that having party support is not an indicator of whether or not you're doing the right thing.
True. Especially with this party.
Yes, exactly.
With my Democrats.
Democrats. yes, exactly. So, I think that, and one thing I would say is that Citizens United absolutely undermined our democracy.
100%.
On every single level. And it's getting worse. There's other things before the Supreme Court that would make this situation worse. If you confronted every single American voter with that reality, they believe that overturning Citizens United with a constitutional amendment would be a benefit.
Yeah.
Would benefit us all, right? And one thing I remind people, especially Democratic Party rooms, is that the greatest consequence of Citizens United is not that Republicans have more money to spend and outrun Democrats. It's that by the time you get to November, that decision has already been made for you because of the way those same Republican donors participate in Democratic Party primaries.
Yeah.
Is they have already set the ceiling so low that they are never going to improve your lives.
Yeah.
And that's horrible. That's horrible. Understanding, I try to make more and more people understand that the primary is where you are going to determine not only the outcome in November, but the outcome in the long run. Mm-hmm. And if you're hoping that somebody who is running on a moderate platform, a platform that is basically allergic to taking a position on anything, is all of a sudden going to grow a conscience or grow wings and become all the things you want it to be when it gets to Congress, you're not going to see that reflected.
Once they have more pressure bearing down on them, I don't think they're going to find their morals then either.
No, and they're always going to use the justification of I won on this.
Yes.
Yep.
Or in avoiding these things as a means of saying, I cannot now change that strategy.
Yeah, and I think broadly that undermines the party. That undermines the progressive wing. That undermines even the centrist wing when we allow these people to come in and give them money to run in red districts to just be Republican light. Because then we get to situations like Joe Manchin voting down $15 minimum wage in the Biden administration.
Or the DHS funding passed like 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
Because 7 centrist Democrats split for no reason.
Well, and then you look at how it went to the Senate and then it got bounced back to the House.
Yep.
And 21 Republicans, I think it was, and you can check that, but I believe it was 21, they didn't vote for that bill.
Yeah, 21 Republicans didn't vote for it, 21 Democrats voted for it.
Funny how that works.
Right? They needed 7 before, they found 7, they needed 21 this time. And so
Isn't that convenient?
It's a work, right?
Wasn't born yesterday, dog. I see what's going on here.
Yeah, right, yeah. But everybody can see that. Everybody can see that. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to say, one, you're trying to validate what people are seeing with their eyes, right? And make them feel like they're not going crazy, right? And so you have to call it what it is. You have to call balls and strikes, whether you're Democrat or Republican.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of bridging that gap is by saying, fucking Democrats are a big problem. Like, if
Yes,
I mean,
because they are.
They are.
They
you
are.
have to accept that responsibility.
I think people respond to that as well. A lot of people do view politics as team sports. A lot of people engage with politics as team sports because we build identities around our political identity. But I know when I talk to people as well, when I criticize Democrats, they're like, "Oh, you're not one of them."
Right.
Yeah,
And
I hate
instantly
those
they
fuckers.
listen to me more.
I do want to ask you about like the nitty gritty of the election, because we've been talking sort of at like a 50,000-foot view here. You've got a contested primary.
Yes.
Wayne Stiles and Callie, what's her last name? Callie Barr, right. You've got 2 other people in your primary, and then if you do win the primary, you'll go on to face Jack Bergman, a guy who's been in Congress since like 2016, I think, something like that.
2018, I believe.
2018.
Unfortunately.
Just give us your take on your opponents in the primary, and then also why this guy who voted to repeal the ACA, voted against the Respect for Marriage Act, went along with the 2020 big lie, and has been an ardent supporter of Israel, still has a goddamn job.
Well, I'll start with that one.
Yeah.
The reason why he has a job is because I don't think that if you're starting like most people start with a partisan identity, right? And that partisan identity is preserved because it's never been terribly challenged by a great opponent, a great alternative.
Yeah.
On the other side, I think that gives you a level of comfort.
Yep.
And I think that what we have done in this country that is demonstrable is that we have created the conditions of apathy and the feeling of helplessness across the board.
Yes.
Is that people believe that whether there's a Republican or a Democrat in office, that their lives are not going to improve.
And you can't blame them
No,
for
exactly.
thinking that.
I absolutely don't blame
Yeah.
them. I absolutely don't blame them.
Yeah.
I feel that to a certain extent that, running for office is that's electoralism leaving your body, right? It is the feeling.
Yeah,
of
fuck it, it's not working.
Exactly. It's the like, oh, fine, I'll do it myself sort of thing,
Yeah.
right? Yep. And so that's a big part of, I'm the candidate I always wanted to vote for, right?
Yeah.
Not to be shitty about it, but yeah.
No, I get it.
I don't
It
think
makes
that's
sense.
shitty at all. I think we really are at a place where Democrats blow and Republicans blow even worse.
Right.
And nobody really wants to vote for these people. And whenever I go out here on my platform and advocate, I'm like, guys, like the Democrats marginally less bad. Let's vote for them.
Go less bad.
And people do want to vote for somebody that they can put some hope into.
Yeah.
People want to vote for somebody they feel represents them.
Well, and I would say this is our district was last blue in 2010. So it's not like this has just been like forever a red
Yeah.
district, right? Like 2010, a minute ago, but it hasn't always been red, which is
Yeah.
to say that it could be blue again. But I hate talking about it in those terms. I want somebody who's going to represent my interests in
Yes.
Congress, whether it's me or somebody else, right? And I think that there is a feeling that that's not going to happen one way or the other. And I think that when you get to team sports politics, when it's reduced to that, that's what it becomes, right? Is right or wrong, you are going to ride with your team. And so if your life isn't getting better, and it hasn't been getting better for decades, but you spent the last 10 years as a Kansas City Chiefs fan, right? And you win the Super Bowl every few years, and that's pretty cool. Like my life's getting shittier one way or the other, but at least the Chiefs won.
Yeah.
And I think that that's cynically how a lot of people approach electoral politics in terms of their partisan identity.
Yeah.
Is from this very petty dunk on the other kind of position. And so if we're going to continue to buy into that, we're never going to shred that framework.
Of course, that's been all that online has been since like 2016 is, oh, let me dunk on the libs. Let me dunk on the libs, blah, blah, blah. Democrats are starting to do that. And like, I do support Democrats getting into the arena, but it's like, ultimately, I want them to win because their policies are better. I want them to win because they believe in things.
Right. Like it's one thing that Gavin Newsom is able to trade barbs with Donald Trump on Donald Trump's level. Like, there's a value to that, right?
Yeah.
But if he's taking if he is disassembling a homeless encampment.
If he hunts them for sport.
Thank you.
Like most dangerous game, yeah.
Exactly. Is you're taking somebody who is deeply vulnerable in a system that you have presided over, and you are punishing them by dumpstering their only worldly possessions, and you're doing it for a photo opportunity. There is something within there. There's a moral rot there that regardless of how well your comms team works, I'm never going to be comfortable with that as my team, right?
Yeah.
This episode of Head in the Office is brought to you by Ground News.
Media literacy is a key component of our podcast here, but spotting the biases in news and reporting, especially in our nonstop media landscape, can be hard. Thankfully, the folks over at Ground News are working to make this a lot easier.
Ground News is an app and a website that collects news from all around the world and puts it in one place so you can compare coverage, uncover political biases, and learn who is funding each publication.
Ground News has a lot of cool features, such as the bias distribution, which shows you the political leanings of the sources reporting on each story, and the blind spot tab, which highlights stories that are being missed by either the left or the right. Ground News will even tell you your own news bias based on the articles you've read on their site.
If you're interested in Ground News, you can go to check.ground.news/headintheoffice for 40% off. The link is also in the description. We would suggest taking a look at their Vantage plan to unlock all the fancy features we referenced, and subscribing to Ground News also helps out the show, which we know you all want to do.
Special thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this podcast, and back to the episode. Let me ask you a bit more about the Democratic Party specifically. If you win your race for Congress, would you support Hakeem Jeffries as leader of the Democrats in the House?
No, I think that you need fresh blood. I think you need fresh blood. And I think that Hakeem Jeffries has been in there long enough, in that position long enough to understand what those outcomes are going to look like. And I don't know that there's a single Democratic Party voter who feels that that person should be the standard bearer of the party. Mm-hmm. And yet there is still an inertia to that person in that position. And one thing I always say about Republicans is Republicans are excellent at basically reforming their party from within. Mm-hmm. That they will have hostile reform candidates come through, whether it be the Tea Party or Trump 1.0 in MAGA or whatever the hell this Trump 2.0 like fascistic, whatever it is, right? That they're excellent at basically taking the husk of their broken down party, throwing it on some new body and shambling around in it. Yeah. Whereas the Democratic Party is excellent at one thing. They're not excellent at opposing the Republicans. They're excellent at opposing internal reform. What we need is a hostile reform candidacy that's coming through. And I think that we're starting to see more of that. But we need to embody that spirit. And what we need to do is we need to stop being the Democratic Party of the Clintons. And we need to start being the Democratic Party of FDR.
I think that's what a lot of regular people want. Like, I think that's the most important thing here is Democrats chase like the average voter so often. They chase Republicans. We can peel off 3% Republicans here. We can do this. But I think regular people, when I talk to everyone that I know that doesn't follow politics, may not even vote all the time. They're like, yeah, everybody kind of sucks. Everybody kind of sucks, and there needs to be a way to do it. And Democrats are so attached to institutions that clearly don't work for everyday people anymore.
And I just see this tendency with Democrats in the Senate, too. They'll say the party's not meeting the moment. We need to talk about issues in a different way. Democrats in the House will say it too, but nobody will ever criticize Democratic leadership.
Yes.
I've seen so many senators, like Elizabeth Warren a couple of weeks ago was talking about how like we need to reject this rebranded neoliberalism and stuff like that. No words for Chuck Schumer. Right. Like the people that are preventing all that progress, or at least preventing the party from going in a different direction, are the people they have no words for, and it doesn't make sense to me.
Right. We'll find them eventually. We'll find those people, whoever is doing that eventually, right?
Yeah, we're all trying to find the guy who did this. Yeah.
And I'm not trying to like go out and antagonize people who are far more wealthy, far more powerful, who can potentially have a massive impact on my election. Right. But I'm calling it what it is, right? Is that we cannot continue to participate in a system that is broken to this extent, and that we cannot continue to just say Democrat good, and just say Democrat good, or it's their turn, or whatever other bullshit that we tend to lean on. We need to just start calling these things what they are, because everybody can see them. I think that's the thing, is that everybody can see them, so you might as well just admit to it and get to work fixing it.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned Israel not taking money from any groups like AIPAC. You've also said before that there's been a genocide in Gaza. We've been complicit in that. I do want to get your take on just like foreign policy broadly, because I find Democrats drop the fucking ball when it comes to Israel. We don't need to relitigate that. But they also, it seems to me that a lot of Democrats have a hard time talking about foreign policy generally. And I think it's often because they just agree with what Trump is doing vis-a-vis like Venezuela or Iran. So how do you think Democrats should talk about the clear and obvious violations of international law, human rights, and so on that the Trump administration commits on a foreign level?
I don't think that you can, I don't think that you can talk about the foreign policy abuses of the Trump administration without talking about the fact that the Biden administration presided over a genocide in Gaza.
Yes.
And in doing so, we have ceded any moral high ground to be able to police these issues.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So long as it is a bipartisan project to have the Iraq wars of the world and the Venezuelas of the world, then we're always, always, always going to be wrapped up into that system. My general feeling is that we should not have $1 trillion military. That military budget should not grow every single year in a country that is surrounded by nothing but oceans and friendly allies.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. What if we put like half of that towards housing?
Well,
Really anything.
I mean, and housing's a perfect example.
Yeah.
You know, like HUD, the entire HUD budget is something like, and you can check me on this one, but I think it was something like $89 billion.
Come on,
right?
man.
It's something pathetic.
Drop in the bucket.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. A drop in the bucket. And so if we're gonna how can we speak seriously about a housing crisis when we're not diverting the resources to actually tend to that crisis?
Mm-hmm.
And instead, every single year, because if you start having talks about housing budget, then it's going to be a war on the floor of Congress.
How are we
right?
going to pay for it?
How the
How are you
hell
gonna
could
pay
we
for it?
possibly
What about
pay
my
for it?
property values?
Exactly. But if you want to grow the military budget by $180 billion, then you have both sides
Yes.
going, actually, that's really
And that
great.
happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No,
Yes.
these aren't hypotheticals.
Yeah, it literally
This
happened.
is shit that happened.
Well,
Yeah.
and you brought up Venezuela. Sorry not to cut you
No,
off,
go,
but
go.
you brought up Venezuela. You brought up this being bipartisan. What was it? Ruben Gallego was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't like that Trump did it, but
He's-
we had to get him out of there.
He said, "Yeah, we need to be able to say that Maduro getting captured is good."
I understand that. I have a constituent whose wife is a Venezuelan immigrant.
Yeah.
right? And she is really struggling right now because I think that there is a genuine a reasonable critique of the Maduro regime.
Of course,
right? Like
yeah.
everybody knows that, right? That's not what's being litigated here. The question is whether or not the U.S. government, that whoever's in the White House, can unilaterally deploy the forces of the American military to depose a foreign leader in a sovereign country, and then just go, all right, their oil is ours now.
And it's the
Like,
type of shit we did like
game, set, match.
the 50, 60 different times in Latin America, and it never ends well.
No, well, and it never ends well for the people.
Right,
and that's the thing.
exactly.
And that's my general critique of imperialism in general, is that we are devoting so many resources to maintaining 750 foreign military bases, manning those, equipping those, giving them the most state-of-the-art equipment and doing those sorts of things, when really what we're doing is we're encroaching on the sovereignty of other nations, right? And what we are usually doing is we are victimizing the American working class so that we can victimize other working classes, the Iraqi working class, the Venezuelan working class.
Iranian working
the
class pretty
Iran-
soon,
Right, exactly.
if not already.
And so my feeling is that since we're just got a shitload of money sitting around so that we can put it in an F-35 program, let's build housing. Let's build our crumbling infrastructure. Let's return to a works progress administration like we had coming out of the New Deal, where we are employing Americans in building America.
Yeah.
Right? Like there could be nothing more patriotic. There could be nothing more American first than deploying your resources at home to address the needs of your people.
Yeah. And the
Right.
Pentagon hasn't passed an audit in 8 years
Ever.
at any point.
And we get this ballooning military budget. Like you said, we don't get money to housing. Or to bring it back to the beginning of the show, we don't get money for rural hospitals. Instead, the same people that vote to increase the military budget also voted to pass the big, beautiful bill and gut Medicaid and close rural hospitals. So problems like you brought up about having to drive 2 hours to Wisconsin or 9 hours to Detroit are getting worse, because the small amount of hospitals that are in those areas are gone.
Yeah.
Because Republicans let them go.
Right. And I don't think that we should be able to consider ourselves like a first world nation so long as there are so many of our people on the street and they can't get housing and healthcare.
Yeah.
Those should be baseline things.
Yeah.
Right? That every single person should expect. And we need to start to take care of those needs, especially since they are relatively low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
this idea
Yeah.
that we're going to absolutely tank our economy, or that we're going to put our children in deep, deep debt because we're providing them with healthcare or housing, neglecting the fact that they're already in medical debt, in student loan debt, and that no matter what happens, we're going to cut tax breaks. We're going to give tax breaks to the wealthy and we're going to grow our national debt
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
right?
I got to ask, because we do bring up how everybody, whenever you want to do something good, it's always how you going to pay for it.
Right.
But whenever you want to like kill people, it's yes, money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, more money, $1 trillion.
I'll give you double what you asked for.
Exactly. Let me
Quite
double
literally,
down.
quite literally, for a tip. Here's a tip.
I feel like I know the answer, but I want to ask you earnestly, how are you going to pay for those things? I feel like I know what you're going to say.
Sure. Well, I think that what people neglect to, like, we had the conversation about the cost of a healthcare plan in this country,
Yep.
right? That the federal government's already covering a portion of it with advanced, tax credits through the ACA subsidies and doing those sorts of things. And so, one is you're reappropriating funds that you're right now just paying towards health insurance premiums, and now you're going to pay directly for healthcare. So that's a big component of it.
Yeah.
Another part of it is your part of it is I'm paying premiums, right? That same premium is coming out of my paycheck one way or the other.
Yeah.
So how is that not a healthcare tax?
It is,
right?
yeah.
It's functionally a healthcare tax. What people don't realize is right now you're paying for premiums, you're paying for administrative fees to the tune of 20%, that you are paying for CEOs' salaries, you're paying for all of this other shit.
Lots
right?
of marketing and stuff too. Yeah.
Right. That we are paying double what the rest of the rest of the world pays in healthcare.
Yeah.
We don't need to do that.
No.
If we had a single payer system, we would have absolute negotiating capabilities so that we would be able to flatten the system in terms of what the reimbursements might be.
Yeah.
And we would be able to basically take the exact same amount of resources that the federal government and the private citizens are paying in their healthcare premiums and put that into a tax like Medicare. Like you're paying towards Medicare on each one of your paychecks, right? If that number went up a bit, and then part of it was that we were significantly reducing the cost of healthcare per capita, that's how you come up with that.
Yeah. Or just like tax the rich and maybe even a little bit.
Exactly.
Well, and that's the thing. And that's just using the resources that are already available to us.
Yes.
And then once you go into taxing the wealthy and really reversing the tax cuts of the last 60 years is a big part of it. I mean, that's what people don't realize is that we used to have a top marginal tax rate of around 90%.
Yes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yes. And it was great.
And it built
And
the
was-
golden age.
That's when we built this country and did all the things that our boomer parents see as nostalgic and and opine on, right? So why can't we go back to that? Are we really concerned that somebody that has functionally infinite money, if I have $1 billion, I can't spend that faster than it's going to replenish itself and grow, right? Like, are we really more concerned that Elon Musk is going to be the first trillionaire than we are that people in northern Michigan aren't dying because they're 45 minutes away from an ER?
Yes.
Right.
And things that help him become the first trillionaire, tax breaks and the big beautiful bill, are things that are making people die in ERs that are now further away as rural hospitals close down.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of the statistics tell us that, like, plainly, no matter which study you're looking at, there's a range that goes from about 400 billion to 600 billion in the amount of money that we would save by going to Medicare for all.
Yeah.
And all of that, and you don't have to avoid care because of the cost. You don't have your claims denied, that you have access to places to get care in rural America, and you save something like 70, 80,000 lives a year.
Yeah.
Like, that's a tremendous amount of human potential and resources off your books to be able to spend on things like housing.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet we're always talking about it as if it was going to be an additional cost rather than really just moving costs around and saving money.
100%. You got anything else?
Oh,
No, I think so. Is there anything else you'd like to opine on?
Yeah,
The
feel free to
floor
throw
is
anything
yours
else out
if
there,
you
man.
feel like there's anything we missed that
Sure.
you want our listeners to be aware that you fuck with.
Well, I would say this is that maybe the third of my top three
Okay.
is really making sure that all American workers have a living wage, that every American worker has paid time off,
Yeah.
that every American worker has a chance at a dignified retirement by expanding Social Security, and making sure that we're taking care of the American working class. Because we are the ones that make everything run in this country. And if we ever decided it, we could make it stop.
Yeah.
And that if that's what that takes one day, then I fully support it. I think that most of what we got in this country is because labor unions fought for them.
Yeah.
Right. Most of the things that we got, the 40-hour work week, the weekends, are basically because of labor unions.
Fought and died for in some cases.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so if we need to return to labor militancy where we are withholding our labor, where we are going on general strike, if we are needing to do that in order to work outside of a system that we acknowledge is broken and undemocratic, then I absolutely support that.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to pass the PRO Act so that we can make our unions strong and protect their rights to organize. And I think overall, our thesis should be, our guiding light should be, you need to improve the lives of the American working class.
Yeah.
And that general affordability ultimately comes back to the things that cost money in your lives, healthcare and housing, but also the amount of money that you make. And when you have these conversations over and over again about whether we should increase the age of retirement or we should cut back on Social Security benefits, that is so predatory and disgusting because it's always the same people who are talking about it, right?
Yeah.
It's the people who stand to benefit from us working all the days of our lives. And I don't think that we should work all the days of our lives. I think normalizing that is insane.
Life is for living, not working.
Exactly. Exactly. So we need to normalize leisure and rest again. And that's one thing that is so often neglected.
Yeah.
Is that you should be able to enjoy a vacation every now and then.
Oh,
You should be able to have a long weekend. And now that we're starting to see the economic effects of AI, and the kind of vampiric nature of AI, where they're taking our intellectual property, they're taking our personal likeness, they're taking our works, and they're using that to effectively replace us.
And it's not even good.
And it's not,
it's not
that
even
shit
good.
sucks.
No,
And the money
no.
won't go to me.
And that's the thing. It's one thing if it was a tool for the working class, and if we had particular intellectual property protections and personal likeness protections and regulations in place, and so that could be a tool for us where we get that Star Trek future that we were promised, where a butterfly flaps its wings different 60 years ago, and we're talking about a 3-day work week, and we're talking about everybody, we're eradicating diseases, and we're doing these sorts of things, right? That was the human potential.
Yeah.
Until you saw that divergence in the way that we are working in terms of our efficiency and our productivity and our compensation, and seeing so much of that compensation go upwards. And so I think that we should absolutely, in the age of AI, one, we should be regulating it.
Yep.
I oppose the location of AI data centers in Upper Michigan.
Huge.
We do not need that. We do not need to be risking our once in a planet natural resources and this beautiful environment that we were given.
Yeah.
And so that we can increase our utility costs.
Especially in the UP. Like, could you imagine all those beautiful trees get cut down to put a concrete brick in?
Right.
Yeah. That has like 3 people working at it.
And that's the thing. And I understand and one thing I say all the time is what we are constantly confronted by, whether it be mining or the Line 5 pipeline or any number of things, is in places like Northern Michigan and the Upper Peninsula, is we are constantly competing with this idea of this looming threat of poverty, right? And that jobs will provide us a momentary respite from the abuses of the system, and that we ransom our once in a planet resources for a few short-term jobs because that sword of Damocles is always hanging over our heads. I want to remove the sword, so we no longer need to ransom those things.
And when it comes to AI, especially, a thing that we've been talking about for a long time, it should just be a public utility. Like, because it is privately owned, it acts as a method of exploitation in all the ways you described, also destroying the environment and stuff like that. But if it was owned by the public and tooled towards public benefit, then you could actually imagine use cases for it. And right now I just can't, because all it's used is to be like, hey, Grok, undress this person.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's insane, man. And it's psychotic.
Well, and the idea that we can't regulate this thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the old people in Congress can't.
Right, because they can't understand it.
Yeah.
And they're generally repulsed by the idea of regulating or managing
Or
anything.
bought and sold by the same guys,
Right. And so I think that we definitely need to rein it in. I mean, this is moving at the speed of light. Nobody knows, and we're starting to see deleterious effects right now, right? And it's only going to get worse with the amount of layoffs that we're already seeing because of AI. And that's why I believe that we need to start having serious conversations about 32-hour work week.
Yeah.
That we need to start working to a point where our progress as a society it benefits the American working class instead of just a handful of billionaires at the top.
Yeah, 100%. Well,
Absolutely.
thank you for coming on the show. If people listening want to support you, where should they go?
Oh, shit. I would go to our website, blomquistforcongress.com. That's a great place to get started. That will have links to all our social media. Easiest way to help us out, honestly, right now in a big district like this, is to help spread our message.
Yeah.
So follow us on social media, share our posts every now and then. It engages people. It moves our reach.
Yeah.
If you can donate to our campaign, we're 100% grassroots. So any small amount helps.
Yeah.
Helps us get around the district. We're not trying to win this race by being the most well-funded. We're just never going to win it that way.
Yeah.
But we do need some basic resources in order to compete on a general basis.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I would say, is that if you're in northern Michigan, or even if you're slightly outside and you're willing to knock doors or make phone calls, sign up on our volunteer sheets on our website, because we can put you to use. Because ultimately, this is going to, if we're going to win this, we're going to win this on the backs of regular working people pulling the load.
Yeah.
Right? I can't do it all myself.
Yeah.
I got it.
No one can.
No, especially because, like, for those that don't know, Michigan's first district is just this enormous
Massive.
chunk of land. It is the entire Upper Peninsula, and I think like a third of the Lower Peninsula. It's crazy.
It's like 44% of Michigan.
Insane.
It's just a math problem. Like, you can't get all over all the time.
Yeah, it's 36 counties.
Yeah.
Like most people have to deal with like a county.
Like
maybe
Rashida
two
Tlaib's
counties.
district is like a sliver of Dearborn in Detroit.
Exactly.
15-minute drive.
Yeah.
But Michigan's first is crazy big.
It's crazy big. It's crazy. You know, it's somewhat diverse in terms of just like the amount of how much isolation contributes to that. But ultimately, I think that we all have the same problems, and whether you're in Felch
doubt.
or you're in Florida, you have those problems. We need to start addressing those problems.
Of course.
And I hope people, more than anything, they don't see me as a Democrat, because I don't see myself as a Democrat. I don't see them as Republicans. I see them as an ally in the American working class.
Yeah.
And that we are the 90% in this country, and we need to start acting like it. We need to start throwing our weight around. And I hope that people at least understand the sincerity of which I'm approaching this.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Kyle Blomquist, thanks for coming on.
It's been great to have you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.